Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night at the local time. First we're going to start with Zelensky, and he talked a lot those days, and he continued doing this, and recently he been interviewed by the NBC News, and he was talking about the future of Ukraine, about the current situation in Ukraine. And you know that currently there are a lot of rumors, a lot of talks about some kind of negotiation process, about the negotiations between Western countries and Russia, about upcoming peace agreement and so on. And as I understand, Zelensky doesn't want to be involved in this situation. He doesn't want to sign any peace agreements. The only thing he wants is to destroy Russia. He's getting crazy on this. We understand this correctly. And you know that if we could talk about some negotiation process yesterday, the day before yesterday, but after this interview, I don't think that there are any chances about any negotiation process between Zelensky and Putin, because he called him in the Western media, one of the most famous one, that Putin is a terrorist, and not just a terrorist, but I can't pronounce this word, but you can see this word that added on this pop-up of this event. Obviously, we understand that Zelensky burned every single bridge between him and Putin about any negotiation process, but he hasn't burned the bridges between Ukraine and Russia. And Zelensky announced about not announced, but the sources from his people, the sources from President office reported that there might be president elections on the 31st of March of 2024. So there are very high chances that Zelensky will be replaced by someone else, and then there might be some negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. But anyway, until 31st of March, there are going to be no negotiation process between Russia and Ukraine, to be more precise, between Zelensky and Putin. And now we're moving to the situation on the ground, and first we're going to start with Odessa. During the previous night, the Russians made significant number of strikes against this port city. The sources are saying that there were up to 4 waves of attacks, 4 waves, a significant number. The Russians were using the Geran drones, and as a result of those strikes, the Russians damaged ammo depots, the Russians destroyed some positions of Ukrainian forces, some launching systems, air defense systems, and so on. During the previous night, the Ukrainians tried to shoot down the Russians using air defense systems. For example, on this video we can see the work of Ukrainian air defense, how they were trying to shoot down the Russian Geran drones. But the thing is that the Ukrainians sometimes during the previous night were using expired missiles for those purposes, and that led to a lot of explosions inside the city and so on. For example, on this video we can see how the Ukrainians launched the air missile to shoot down the Russian drone, but missile was expired and the missile fell down inside the city. And as a result of that, there was a very big funeral in the city. As I understand, there were no casualties among civilians, but anyway, it shows us the real situation with air defense of Ukrainian forces. And Odessa is one of the most important towns. Just imagine yourself what is happening with air defense in not important towns of Ukraine. The sources are saying that Geran strikes was as a result of response to Ukrainian attack against the village that located on the east from Mariupol, the village by the name of Sidova. There were lots of explosions, and when we started receiving this update, the sources were saying that the Ukrainians were using Storm Shadow missiles and ATACMS missiles, but later we got updates that there were no attack from the Ukrainian side, and basically there was something like a problem with electricity in the warehouse where the Russians were keeping a lot of weapon and munition, and there was just a regular secondary detonation. Now let's move to the situation on the ground. We have some updates from Kherson direction. The Ukrainians continue holding their bridgehead in Krinky, and the Russians haven't managed to force the Ukrainians to step back. The only thing that the Russians can do is to bomb the Ukrainian cities like Berislav, Kazatsky, Veselye, Mykolaiivka, the cities of the main concentration of the Ukrainian forces, to prevent them from creating the critical mass and possible landing operation. You know that obviously obviously, if Zelensky is planning to become the president for the next term, and obviously he wants to be the president for the second term, he needs to show some progress. And now is like the 6th of November, so basically he has a little bit less than 6 months to show the results, not for the Western countries. He doesn't care about the Western countries, their opinion. He needs to show the results for the Ukrainians. And he needs, during the next 6 months, to capture something or to liberate something or whatever. So as I understand, Zelensky will focus on Kherson area, and we're going to see a very bloody clashes during the next 6 months. When talking about South Donetsk direction, we also got some details, some updates. The Russians continue bombardments of Ukrainian positions in Urozhaine. Obviously, everything tells us that the Russians do have some plans regarding this territory. If you remember, during the previous weeks and days, they managed to establish control and capture some trenches and footholds between Priyutin, Rozhaina, Staromayorskaya, and now the Russians are bombing the Ukrainian shelters and positions in the vicinity of Rozhaina. So as I understand, due to the significant focus of Russian forces in this area, we might see some offensive operation in this area as well. Some updates are coming from Donetsk direction. The sources are saying that during the previous night there were a lot of very heavy artillery bombardments of Ukrainian forces in Stepovo, in the vicinity of Novokalinovo, and the sources on the ground are saying that the Russians are currently trying to develop their positions along these white clouds. So they want to improve their positions, they want to increase the foothold under their control, and just to secure their forces. And as I understand, during the upcoming day, we're going to see more updates of clashes exactly in this square, with the purpose of the Russians to get to the southern outskirts of Novokalinovo and to the eastern outskirts of Stepovo. Some updates are coming from Bakhmut, Artyomovsk direction. The Russians continue their offensive operation in the vicinity of Berkhovka, Yahidne, Dubovo, Vasilievka, and as a result of clashes, according to information we have, the Russians managed to establish control over a few more trenches and 3 lines in this area, and they managed to maintain the gray zone and to get as close as possible to the Ukrainian positions that located along the railways. So as I understand, the next phase, the next step from the Russian side is to start offensive operation against this territory and to continue offensive operation with the purpose to establish control over the fields between Bogdanovka, this area, railways, and especially the Russians are planning to establish control over Khromovo. If the Russians can do this, they will be able to reduce the pressure of Ukrainian forces on the southern flank in the vicinity of Klishchevka and Andreevka, where the Ukrainians continue their offensive operation, and there are more and more evidence and updates that Ukrainians, as a result of clashes, managed to cross the railways in many points and to continue offensive operation further. So the Russians do have some problems in this area. They don't want to have something like a close combat. They want to keep a distance, but Ukrainians are pushing, so that's why to keep the distance, the Russians need always to step back. And to stop this process, they need to open the second front line, the Russians, on the northern flank of Bakhmut. We got some details and updates from the area of Vasikovka. If you remember, during the previous few weeks ago, we got update that the Russians launched an offensive operation in this area, and some sources were saying that as a result of that attack, the Russians managed to establish control over the entire Vasikovka, but we haven't received any geolocations and so on. We got just one video of the Russian artillery preparation before possible offensive operation. And today, on the 6th of November, the 30th Mechanized Brigade of Ukrainian Forces published the video of those clashes, of that battle. And as you can see, as a result of that battle, the Russians lost few armored vehicles, but another important thing, another important explosion was geolocated in the vicinity of this farm or the barracks. So there are very high chances that as a result of those clashes, the Russians haven't managed to establish control over the entire Vasikovka, but there are very high chances that the Russians answered this farm, and currently this area is under complete Russian control. So this is very important foothold. They can control from this area, from this farm barracks, the bridges that goes on this foothold, and obviously after short regrouping, the Russians have chances to continue offensive operation and to complete the clearing of this part of Vasikovka that located, let's say, on the Russian side of these rivers. We haven't received anything during the previous night from Kupiansk-Liman front lines, just the regular clashes, regular updates, and regular things from the Russian and Ukrainian side. And that's it for this video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.